I stood frozen in the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel in Chicago, my heart pounding as my mother, Barbara, tapped her champagne glass with a silver spoon. That sharp, familiar clink twisted my stomach. I knew that smirk on her face, the one she wore when she was about to tear me down. My name's Emma, and I should have been lost in the glow of my daughter Sophia's wedding dress, radiant under the chandeliers. Instead, I was counting my breaths, trying to keep the panic at bay. Barbara rose from the head table, her silk dress catching the light. "Before we toast the happy couple," she said, her voice dripping with that honeyed venom I'd dreaded for years, "I'd like to share a few words with my granddaughter." Beside me, my best friend Rachel grabbed my hand under the tablecloth. "Don't let her get to you, Emma," she whispered, her voice steady but urgent. But we both knew it was too late. Barbara had a way of turning joy into a battlefield, and I was always her favorite target. I glanced at Sophia, laughing with her new husband, Ethan, at the center of the room. She deserved this perfect day, not the storm I felt brewing. My eyes flicked to my sister, Laura, seated across the room in a flawless designer gown, her face unreadable. "Sophia, darling," Barbara continued, her tone so sweet it made my skin crawl, "you look breathtaking, just like your Aunt Laura did at her wedding. You've chosen well, a good man." She paused, her gaze slicing through the crowd to find me. "Unlike some of us." The room went quiet, the clatter of forks and glasses fading. Ethan shifted in his seat, his brow furrowing. Sophia's smile faltered, her eyes starting to me. I felt the weight of every stare, the judgment Barbara had cultivated for years. My divorce, my so-called failure, was her favorite weapon. 15 years. That's how long I'd stayed silent about what really happened in my marriage, all to protect her precious family image. 15 years of her spinning a story that I was the one who couldn't keep a husband, the one who let everyone down. My hand trembled around my champagne flute, the liquid sloshing. Rachel squeezed my fingers tighter. "Breathe," she murmured. But my chest felt like it was caving in. Barbara raised her glass higher, her smirk widening. "Emma," she said, her voice cutting like a blade, "why don't you share some wisdom with Sophia? Tell her what not to do in a marriage." The room spun. I saw Laura look up, her perfect composure cracking just a fraction. Sophia's eyes locked on mine, wide with worry. My mother's words hung in the air, daring me to stay silent, to swallow the shame like I always had. But something stirred inside me, something tired of her games. Rachel leaned closer, her voice fierce. "Don't let her win, Emma. Not this time." I looked at Sophia, my strong, beautiful daughter who'd grown up watching me shrink under Barbara's shadow. And for the first time in years, I felt a spark of defiance. Maybe this was the moment to finally fight back. Barbara's voice echoed in the Drake Hotel's ballroom, her words like a whip. "Tell her what not to do, Emma." The Chicago skyline glittered through the windows, but inside, the air was thick with tension. Every eye was on me, waiting for me to crumble under my mother's attack. My champagne glass shook in my hand, the liquid catching the chandelier's light. Sophia, my daughter, stared at me from the head table, her wedding veil framing her worried face. Ethan, her new husband, leaned toward her, his jaw tight. My sister, Laura, sat frozen, her perfect manicure gripping her napkin. Rachel's hand tightened on mine under the table. "Don't let her win, Emma," she hissed, her voice low but fierce. I looked at Sophia, her eyes pleading, not for silence, but for something else, strength, maybe. Hope. My mother's smirk dared me to stay quiet, to let her control the narrative like she had for 15 years. But I was done. "Actually, Barbara," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. I stood, pushing my chair back with a scrape. "I do have some wisdom to share." The room gasped, a ripple of shock spreading through the guests. Barbara's smirk faltered, her eyes narrowing. "Emma, sit down," she ordered, but her voice cracked, betraying a hint of fear. "No," I said, stepping toward the DJ booth. I grabbed the microphone, my hands shaking, but my resolve firm. "If you want me to speak, I will." The crowd went silent, the clink of glasses and murmurs fading. Even the waiters stopped moving. I turned to Sophia, her face a mix of pride and concern. "Sophia, sweetheart," I said, my voice clear, "your grandmother's right about one thing. Marriage is sacred. That's why I left mine." A collective inhale filled the room. Barbara's face turned red, her composure unraveling. "Emma, stop this nonsense," she snapped, but I ignored her. "For 15 years," I continued, "Barbara's told everyone I failed at marriage. What she hasn't told you is why I left David." My voice grew stronger, each word a release. "David didn't just break my heart. He broke my bones. He put me in the hospital twice. And Barbara? She knew." Gasps echoed around the ballroom. Laura's fork clattered onto her plate, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sophia stepped forward, her white dress rustling. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling but urging me on. "Go on." I took a deep breath, the microphone steady in my hand. "Barbara told the nurses I fell down the stairs. She made me promise not to sue, to keep quiet, all to protect her perfect family image." I turned to my mother, whose tears were starting to fall, tears I knew were as fake as her concern. "You covered for a monster, Barbara. You chose your reputation over your own daughter." The room was a sea of stunned faces. Ethan stood beside Sophia, his arm around her protectively. Rachel rose, her hand on my shoulder, a silent vow of support. "Emma, this isn't the place," Barbara pleaded, her voice shaking, her crocodile tears glistening. "You're ruining Sophia's day." "No," I said, my voice cutting through hers. "Sophia deserves the truth on her wedding day. She deserves to know that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away." Laura stood, her designer dress catching the light. "Emma," she said, her voice cracking, "is this true?" I met her gaze, seeing the confusion, the doubt she'd carried for years, fed by Barbara's lies. "Show them your wrist, Emma," Sophia said, her voice firm. With trembling fingers, I pushed up my bracelet, revealing the jagged scar across my wrist. "This wasn't from falling," I said softly. "This was from David throwing me through a glass door when I tried to leave him." Barbara's tears stopped, her face paling. For the first time, she had no words. I gripped the microphone tighter, knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The truth was just beginning to unravel, and I was ready to pull every thread. The Drake Hotel's ballroom was a pressure cooker, the Chicago skyline outside mocking the chaos within. My scar, bared for all to see, silenced the crowd. Barbara's face was a mask of panic, her fake tears drying up as I held the microphone like a weapon. Sophia stood by my side, her wedding dress glowing under the chandeliers, her eyes fierce with support. Ethan, her new husband, gripped her hand, his face hard with anger. Laura, my sister, swayed in her seat, her designer gown no shield against the truth I'd just unleashed about David's abuse and Barbara's cover-up. Rachel, my rock, whispered, "Keep going, Emma. Don't stop now." I took a shaky breath, the weight of 15 years of lies pressing down. "But that's not all, Sophia," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Your grandmother didn't just hide what David did to me. She's been hiding something bigger. Something about my father, Henry." The room froze, the clink of glasses gone, the air thick with shock. Barbara lurched forward, her voice a desperate hiss. "Emma, enough. You're destroying this family." But her words were weak, crumbling like her carefully built facade. "Henry, my dad," I continued, locking eyes with Sophia, "died when his car went off a bridge in Evanston 15 years ago. Everyone called it an accident. But I found his letters last month, hidden in the attic of our old house." I turned to Barbara, whose hands gripped the table, knuckles white. "Letters where Dad threatened to expose your affair with Michael, your business partner. Letters where he said he had proof you and Michael were stealing millions from his company." Gasps rippled through the guests. Laura stood, her face pale, her voice barely a whisper. "Emma, what are you saying?" I met her gaze, seeing the sister who'd believed Barbara's lies all these years. "I'm saying Dad's death wasn't an accident, Laura. He was going to the police with evidence of their crimes. And 3 days later, he was dead." Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling. Ethan pulled her close, his eyes darting to Barbara, who was shaking her head frantically. Ridiculous. Barbara stammered, her voice shrill. Henry's death was a tragedy, nothing more. You're delusional, Emma. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Whispers spread, eyes narrowing at her. I pressed on, my voice cutting through her protests. I found Dad's briefcase, Barbara. The one you said was lost. It was buried in the backyard shed, right where you and Michael hid it. Bank statements, photos, proof of everything Dad was about to expose. Rachel stepped forward, her voice loud and clear. I was there when Emma found it. We saw the documents, the letters. And you know what else? Emma's already given copies to the Chicago PD. The room erupted in murmurs, heads turning, phones slipping out as guests started recording. Barbara's face went from red to ghostly white. You're lying, she whispered, but her voice was barely audible. Sophia stepped toward me, her voice trembling but strong. Mom, is this true? Did Grandma know about Dad? I nodded, my throat tight. She knew, Sophia. She's been lying to us all to protect herself. Laura's eyes filled with tears, her perfect world cracking. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice breaking. Because she made sure I couldn't, I said softly. She told everyone I was unstable, that I made it up. I almost believed her myself. A distant wail of sirens broke the silence, growing louder. Barbara's eyes widened, her hands trembling. You called the police? She gasped. I nodded, gripping the microphone. Last week. They're reopening Dad's case. The ballroom doors swung open, and the crowd parted as the truth I'd held for so long finally broke free, with no way to stop it now. Ethan's SUV roared through the dark, the Chicago skyline fading as we sped toward a secluded cabin by Lake Michigan. Sophia sat beside me, still in her wedding dress, the white satin catching the moonlight. Laura gripped the door handle, her face pale, while Ethan's eyes stayed locked on the road. The weight of what I'd revealed at the Drake Hotel, Barbara's lies, David's abuse, and Dad's suspicious death hung heavy in the air. Rachel had stayed behind to handle the police, but her words echoed in my head. Find that evidence, Emma. And this. The cabin loomed ahead, its weathered wood barely standing after 15 years of neglect. Lake Michigan's waves lapped against the shore, the dock stretching into the dark water. Look, Sophia whispered, pointing at fresh tire tracks in the gravel. My stomach dropped. Barbara must have tipped someone off, I said, my voice tight. Maybe Michael. Laura's eyes widened. Her business partner? The one Dad was going to expose. I nodded, my heart racing. We need to move fast. Ethan pulled a flashlight from the glove box. Police are an hour out, he said, his voice steady but urgent. We're on our own for now. We stepped onto the creaking dock, the cold lake air biting my skin. Dad's letters had mentioned evidence hidden under the dock, and I prayed it was still there. I knelt, shining my light into the murky water. There, half buried in mud, was a rusted metal box, its padlock glinting. Got it, I said, my breath catching. Ethan waded into the shallow water, his shoes sinking as he reached for it. A voice cut through the darkness like a blade. I wouldn't touch that if I were you. We spun around. Michael stood at the dock's edge, his coat flapping in the wind, a gun gleaming in his hand. His face was hard, no trace of the charming businessman I'd known. Sophia gasped, clutching Ethan's arm. Laura stepped back, her heels catching on the wood. 15 years, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You got away with killing my dad for 15 years. Michael's laugh was cold. Henry was a fool. Thought he could ruin everything, my deals, my network. He had to go. He gestured at the box. That's his so-called insurance. Proof of my work, Barbara's affair, the money we moved. You touch it, you're all dead. Laura's voice trembled. You and Barbara planned this together? Michael sneered. She was useful. Desperate to keep her perfect life. But I ran the show. Always have. The distant wail of sirens broke the night, faint but growing closer. Ethan shifted, shielding Sophia. It's over, Michael, I said, stepping forward, my voice steadier than I felt. We have Dad's letters, the briefcase. The police know everything. His eyes narrowed, his gun steady. You found what Henry wanted you to find. But that box? It names everyone: judges, senators, cops. You have no idea how deep this goes. Sophia's voice rang out fierce. That's why you're here. Barbara told you about the cabin when they arrested her. Michael's grip tightened on the gun. She panicked. Thought she could save herself by ratting me out. But I've spent 15 years protecting this. I'm not stopping now. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flashing through the trees. They're coming, I said, my heart pounding. Whatever's in that box, the police will get it. Michael's face twisted. No, they won't. He aimed at the water, firing at the box. Ethan lunged, tackling him to the dock. The gun went off again, the bullet splashing harmlessly into the lake. Sophia screamed. Police cars screeched to a stop, officers spilling out, weapons drawn. Drop it, they shouted. Michael struggled, trying to aim at the box one last time. Laura grabbed a rock from the shore and hurled it, striking his temple. He collapsed, the gun clattering away. I dove into the icy water, my hands closing around the dented box. Sophia shouted, pointing at a key floating nearby. Michael's, dropped in the fight. With trembling fingers, I unlocked it. Inside were documents, a USB drive, and a ledger listing names, dates, payments. Laura peered over my shoulder, her voice a whisper. Judges, politicians, CEOs. A detective approached, his face grim. Your dad uncovered a corruption ring that runs this city. This could bring them all down. As the police secured Michael, I clutched the box, the truth Dad died for finally in my hands. But I knew this was only the beginning. The Chicago police station was cold, its fluorescent lights buzzing as Laura and I sat across from Barbara in a stark interrogation room. Her manicured hands were folded tightly, her once perfect appearance frayed, hair loose, eyes sunken. The weight of the Lake Michigan showdown pressed on us, Michael's arrest, the box of evidence exposing a citywide corruption ring, and the truth about Dad's death. Sophia and Ethan were safe at a hospital under police guard, but the air here was heavy with unfinished business. I stared at Barbara, my mother, the woman who'd orchestrated so much pain, waiting for her to speak. Emma, Laura, she began, her voice trembling. I never meant for it to go this far. Laura's eyes flashed, her voice sharp. You hid Dad's murder. You let David beat Emma. Don't play the victim now. Barbara flinched, her hands shaking. Michael trapped me, she said, her words rushing out. It started small, moving money, fudging records at Henry's company. I thought it was harmless. But when your dad found out, Michael showed me what he was capable of. I leaned forward, my voice low, furious. So you helped Michael kill Dad? Barbara's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. No, she whispered. I thought Michael would just scare him, keep him quiet. I didn't know he'd push Henry's car off that bridge. Her voice broke, but I felt no pity. And David? I pressed, my scar itching under my bracelet. You let him hurt me to keep me in line, didn't you? She nodded, tears spilling. Michael picked David. Said we needed someone to control you, to stop you from digging into Henry's death. I was scared, Emma. Michael threatened to ruin us all if I didn't obey. Laura's face crumpled, her voice barely audible. What about my marriage, Mom? Was that a lie too? Barbara looked away, shame etching her face. James works for Michael's shell company. They needed someone inside the family, watching us. Your marriage, it was arranged to keep you compliant. Laura gasped, her hand covering her mouth. I gripped the table, my knuckles white. You sold us out, I said, my voice steady but burning. For what? Your country club status? Your reputation? Before Barbara could answer, a detective burst in, his face grim. Michael's dead. Found in his cell an hour ago. Looks like suicide. Barbara's eyes widened, her breath hitching. No, she whispered, panic rising. They'll think I talked. They'll come for us. Who's they? I demanded, my heart racing. Barbara's voice dropped to a frantic murmur. The ledger from the lake house, it names everyone. Judges, senators, police chiefs. Michael was just a piece of their machine. Henry found proof of their bribes, their murders. That's why I kept you away from that cabin. I knew he had evidence there. Her eyes darted between us. They'll kill to protect their secrets. The detective's radio crackled. We're moving you all to protective custody, he said, his tone urgent. If what she's saying is true, you're targets now. Laura stood, her voice cold. I'm not going anywhere with her. Barbara reached for my hand, her grip desperate. Emma, please. I know I've done everything wrong, but let me help now. I can tell the police everything, names, deals, everything Michael told me. I pulled my hand away, my voice like steel. Help? You think that erases what you did? You let Dad die. You let me bleed. You trapped Laura in a fake marriage. Barbara's face crumpled, but I didn't care. The detective's phone buzzed, his expression darkening. We've got a problem, he said. Your friend Rachel's house was hit. They took her laptop, the one with copies of Henry's evidence. Barbara's voice cut through the chaos, urgent. There's another copy. In a safe at the Lincoln Park Country Club. Michael never knew. I stared at her, torn between distrust and the faint chance she was finally telling the truth. The Chicago courthouse steps swarmed with reporters, their cameras flashing as I walked through the crowd. Rachel squeezed my hand, her presence steadying me. Today was the final day of a trial that had rocked the city, exposing a web of corruption Dad died trying to unravel. Inside, Sophia met us in the hallway, her eyes fierce with the same determination I'd seen on her wedding day the day this all began. Ready, Mom? She asked, her voice strong. I nodded, my heart full. In the courtroom, Barbara sat on the witness stand, her voice clear as she named names: judges, senators, CEOs detailing decades of bribes and murders. Judge Wilson, the ringleader, slumped at the defense table, his empire crumbling. Laura stood nearby, clutching divorce papers for her sham marriage to James, who'd taken a plea deal to testify. Our eyes met, and she gave a small nod, a silent vow of solidarity. The prosecutor turned to Barbara. What made you come forward? She looked at me, her voice catching. My daughter, Emma. She spoke the truth at her daughter's wedding, knowing the cost. She showed me protecting lies isn't protecting people. The prosecutor nodded. And the evidence from the Lincoln Park Country Club safe? Barbara's eyes softened. From my husband, Henry. He died for it. I hid it out of fear, but he left it for his daughters to find, knowing they'd be strong enough to use it. The jury didn't take long. Guilty verdicts rang out, one after another. Wilson's head bowed, defeated. Outside, reporters thrust microphones at us, but Sophia stepped forward, her voice clear. This started at my wedding, when my mom exposed her abuse. It ends here with the truth freeing our city from corruption. Secrets protect the guilty. The truth, no matter how painful, sets us free. That night, we gathered at Rachel's house, me, Laura, Sophia, Ethan, and Rachel. The TV blared news of arrests, footage of corrupt officials in handcuffs. Laura raised her glass, her voice soft. To Dad. He'd love this. To the truth, we echoed. Sophia leaned into Ethan, smiling. And new beginnings. No lies, no control. Rachel grinned. Speaking of new beginnings, guess who asked me out? Laughter filled the room, warm and real. I looked around at my family, not the perfect image Barbara forced on us, but something better, honest, flawed, free. The truth cost us our mother, our illusions, but it gave us freedom to be ourselves, to choose our paths, to love without chains. Somewhere, I knew Dad was smiling. His daughters hadn't just exposed corruption, we'd broken the lies that bound us for so long. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's the courage to live truthfully, no matter the cost.